Halloween may or may not be right around the corner, depending on when this video goes out. Nonetheless, I thought I would subject myself to some of the worst kinds of torture a person can endure. I'm sure this isn't the first time you see this little bald brat. Caillou's probably the most hated cartoon character ever by a significant margin, and has been the subject of many less than flattering parodies over the years. He's meant to be loathed so much that, according to a 2023 poll from Ranker.com, Caillou ranks number 9 on their most hated TV characters of all time list. That's right, a 4-year-old cartoon child is on the same list as literal serial murderers in terms of hateability. Caillou seems to be the absolute bane of parents everywhere, but somehow it's managed to be on the air for over 2 decades. And it's still going. In fact, there was a CGI reboot that premiered earlier this year that looks absolutely terrifying. Perhaps unsurprisingly, there were several episodes of the original show that were banned at one point or another because of questionable behavior. So I had the bright idea of subjecting myself to and reviewing these banned episodes to see just why they were once considered unsuitable for TV. That being said, we're going to skip the episodes where Caillou throws a massive tantrum because he wasn't going to the circus, and the one where he pinches his newborn sister hard enough to make her scream in pain. Those two have already been talked about to death, and there's only so much for those less than 5-minute segments you can talk about. And besides, it's about time we look at some other dishonorable mentions from the series. The first episode we'll be looking at is Caillou Goes Around the Block. Caillou's mom has fallen asleep on the porch bench, leaving her son completely unsupervised and free to terrorize the neighborhood. He catches a glimpse of his older friend Sarah on her skateboard and decides to follow her around the block. He takes pleasure in the invigorating activity of standing in a sprinkler with his clothes on, like some kind of masochist. The narrator notes that he was having fun being outside with no one telling him what to do, indicating to us his early tyrannical tendencies taking place.
It was fun being out with no one to tell him what to do.
He plays hopscotch with some girl before Sarah's dog gives him the stink eye. Seriously, what the hell kind of face is on that dog? He then narrowly avoids being taken away by a crow before meeting his gardener neighbor. She gives him a tomato before walking him back home, and Caillou's mom couldn't give less of a fuck about what just happened. As you could probably guess, this episode was banned because not only did Caillou walk around the block unsupervised, but it's treated as a positive thing during the episode. Definitely not something you want to encourage your toddler audience to do, especially if they live in a busier area. A block might not cover that much, but still something most people don't want a small child to wander around by themselves. I have to wonder, though, if Caillou's mom wasn't just a little bit disappointed that the big-ass crow didn't fly Caillou somewhere far away. And Caillou makes a new friend. Caillou is playing in the sandbox with his grandpa when a boy named Jim wants to play with him, and immediately things go to shit. The two boys fight over the bucket, and Caillou cries like a little bitch to his grandpa. Jim gives a half-assed apology, to which Caillou responds by going over to the swings. Jim continues to be an asshole, while Caillou once again runs crying to his grandpa. Caillou is upset that Jim always has to get his own way.
He always wants to be first.
In other words, Caillou is pissed that he's getting a taste of his own medicine. Jim's mom scolds her son, and the two make up like nothing happened. Kids, right? Apparently, people thought that Jim's bullying was a bit too intense. Honestly, though, I don't really agree. There's nothing here that's worse than what we've seen Caillou do many times over. Not only that, but Jim's mother reprimands him, and everything turns out fine, so I don't really see what the issue is. In Caillou's quarrel, his friend Clementine has come over for a playdate. He coyly greets her at the door, in an attempt to hide his nefarious nature. Clementine has brought over a massive amount of toys, which I can only imagine she stored in a bag of holding. Seriously, there is no way all those toys could fit into that bag with room left over otherwise. Caillou wants to play dinosaurs, but Clementine wants to play family. Caillou then immediately resorts to throwing a hissy fit, all while Clementine remains calm and tries to compromise, showing that despite being around the same age as him, she's obviously more mature. This does nothing to placate Caillou, who angrily declares that he doesn't want to play with Clementine anymore, nor does he like her anymore, like the piece of shit that he is. All because he refused to play something different than what he wanted. Caillou runs to his mommy as usual, and she has the two make up. Clementine apologizes, even though she really has nothing to apologize for, and Caillou apologizes without even looking at her. Then Clementine's brother comes over and they all play nice. The end. Yeah. Fuck this episode. This is one of the episodes that really shows us why Caillou is so hated as a character and a show. He throws an absolute bitch fit the millisecond he did get his way, and blew up as Freddy was nothing but calm, and to show maturity by saying he was willing to compromise. Instead of Caillou being told that it's important to take turns or compromise, they're both made to apologize, and the bald bastard probably doesn't even really mean it. He doesn't even get reprimanded for yelling at Clementine. Not only that, but earlier in the episode, the narrator explicitly states that Caillou wanted to build a house for his dinosaur toys with his building blocks.
And he was going to explain exactly how he wanted to build a house for them with his building blocks.
Why did the episode resolve with the two of them compromising to build a house for the dinosaurs, then play family with the houses they built? I feel like that would have been a much better resolution than Clementine's older brother has come over. Let's forget about everything that just happened. I guess the writers just really wanted that big brother ex machina. Next is an episode I actually distinctly remember watching as a small child, called Caillou's Getting Older. Caillou and his dad come across a dead bird, to which his dad has the best reaction to ever. They decide to bury the bird, and Caillou asks why it died, to which his dad replies that it probably got old. This begins Caillou's fear of getting old and dying, and he notices how everyone around him is getting older. And you can tell it's bothering him, because he makes this face. At bedtime, Caillou tells his parents about his existential crisis. His parents assure him that he has nothing to worry about, because he has his whole life ahead of him. The two reasons why this episode was banned are because its themes were centered around death, and for having a dead bird appear on screen. And honestly, I don't really agree with this one. I know when I was a kid, getting older was something I worried about. And for as much as I could joke about Caillou giving me that fear, I think that aging and death is something young kids think about more than a lot of people believe. Sooner or later in life, they'll learn that someone died of old age, and will likely question and think about it. So I don't think it's wrong to acknowledge those thoughts and fears, and let them know that there are lots of things to look forward to as they grow older. As for the dead bird, I don't think it's wrong to show what happens when a living being is no longer alive, especially since there was nothing gory or graphic about it. I've seen my parents bury pets after they died, and it was treated like a normal part of life, and not anything that I need to be shielded from just because I was a young child. There's a lot more when it comes to talking to kids about death and dying, but specifically regarding death from old age, I think this was done pretty tactfully. If anything, I think banning this episode is actually a disservice to kids, which is the last thing I expected to say about Caillou. In the episode Caillou watches Rosie, Caillou and Rosie are playing with a noisy toy when their mom tells him to knock that shit off because she has a headache. She gives him some markers and paper to draw with, and Caillou soon catches Rosie scribbling on the walls. He tries to pull the marker out of her hand while she hits him, which may or may not be payback for when he almost broke her skin as a baby. When he snatches the marker out of her hand, she cries like a bitch. Their mom reprimands Caillou, and he's understandably pissed that he's getting scolded when he was just trying to stop Rosie from ruining the walls. Because no matter how old you are, getting blamed for something you didn't do sucks, even if it is over something minor. A moment later, his mom asks him what happened, and they bond over similar experiences. This episode was banned because of Caillou being unfairly blamed for making his sister cry. Except literally right after that, his mom gently asks him what happened, and she comforts him afterwards. It's not as though he got punished for something he didn't do. I can't help but think it's weird that of all the episodes to ban, people made enough of a fuss over one where Caillou was justifiably upset, and his mother actually handled the situation in an appropriate way. In Rosie bothers Caillou, Caillou is expressing his destructive tendencies, and yells at his sister for doing the very same thing he was just doing. She continues pissing him off, and when Caillou goes to tell his mom, she tells him tough shit.
You and Rosie have to learn how to work out your own problems.
She's 2. She's barely old enough to string 3 words together into a comprehensive sentence. How exactly do you expect them to work it out? Caillou then goes to his room to read, and is once again pissed that his sister has the audacity to exist in the same space as him. Seriously, it looks like all she wanted to do was sit on the bed next to him and read her own book. Caillou then proceeds to physically push Rosie off the bed and out of his room, locking her out. She starts banging on her door with the book when her mom tells her to knock it the fuck off. Once he asks Caillou if he made her cry, he gives her the least convincing sounding no ever.
No.
Apparently this is good enough for Caillou's mom, because she shrugs her shoulders like an idiot and takes Rosie to bed. Caillou is happy to finally have some alone time, when he realizes there's only so much fun he can have when he has no one to order around. He then decides he wants to be nice to his sister now that it's convenient to him. Again, fuck this episode. First of all, Instead of his mom explaining to Caillou that just for the time being he needs to watch Rosie because Mommy's busy right now, she blows him right off. Then he manhandles his sister because she dared to try and sit next to him, and his mom doesn't do a goddamn thing, even after he gives her a very suspicious sounding no. I know she didn't see him push Rosie around, but he still never called out for it or made to apologize at all. I'm not saying you should treat your audience like they're idiots, even if they're toddlers. But for such a young target age group, especially for an edutainment series, you do need to make a clear distinction between what's right and wrong. Finally, he only decides to be nice to Rosie when he wants to play something with her. This episode could have easily had his mom explain to him that sometimes he needs to spend time with his sister, but also acknowledge that he also needs time to himself just like everyone else. But instead, she's just a parent-shaped doormat. It's yet another episode that fully encapsulates why people hate this show. In hide and seek, Caillou causes a head-on collision while Rosie sits nearby. She then goes to his toy box to play with some curly unused toys when he rips them out of her hand like the selfish prick that he is. He then only lets her play with them when she starts crying. When he goes to tell his parents, they tell him to suck it up and play with her. So Caillou decides to build a pillow fort for her to play with in the hopes of keeping her occupied. I don't know why the parents could just give her something like one of her own toys to keep her busy so the two could play separately, but I guess we needed some way for him to actually want to play hide and seek with his sister. Also, their dad made gingerbread cookies. Cool, I guess. On the one hand, I get that being forced to play with your siblings and having to share your possessions would be bothersome if all you want to do at the moment was play by yourself. However, Caillou of course handled it in the worst way possible by ripping two of his many currently unplayed with toys right out of his sister's hands. And yet, he was the one that came up with the idea to do what his parents should have done. Give her something of her own to play with, since that's clearly what she wanted to do in the first place. There could have been a lesson here about Caillou learning to let go of some of his toys that he doesn't play with anymore, and seeing his sister not getting enjoyment out of them makes him happy. Instead, we had Caillou being his usual insufferable, greedy self, and his parents doing fuck it all. In Caillou's crossword, Caillou and his friend Leo are admiring an older boy on a sick skateboard. They learn the word stupid from him, and, being very impressionable 4-year-olds, they gleefully repeat it while being blissfully ignorant of what it means. He is nice enough to give Caillou a whirl on his skateboard, though. When Clementine approaches them, they call her stupid. She runs away crying, while the two boys laugh like sadists. In all seriousness, though, this is apparently the only time she's ever cried in the show. And seeing as how she's one of the most mature and level-headed of the child characters, it's actually quite sad to see her so distressed. She didn't even cry when Caillou outright told her he didn't like her during their playdate. Later, Caillou ends up teaching the word stupid to Rosie, and her mom acts like the kid just dropped an F-bomb. She then gets a phone call from Clementine's mom, who tells her about the incident at the park. At night, she explains to Caillou that stupid is a hurtful word, and he then apologizes to Clementine over the phone. They all go to the park the next day and everything's hunky-dory. The word stupid is said exactly 10 times during this episode.
Stupid birds. Stupid birds didn't get in my way this time.
Stupid birds. Clementine, stupid. Yeah, you're stupid. Stupid cubes. Stupid. 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 Sorry about calling you stupid.
Apparently, this was too many times for parents, which is how this episode got banned. While 10 times in less than 5 minutes might be a bit overkill, it's still something that's very explicitly shown to be a bad thing. Hell, you have one of the nicest characters in the show crying her eyes out. If that doesn't hammer things in to show what Caillou did was a dick move, I don't know what will. Plus, Caillou's mom explains why it's hurtful, and we see him apologize for it. If anything, I'm surprised that more people didn't raise a fuss about how Leo wasn't made to apologize, nor the older boy who taught them the words in the first place. Whatever, this whole thing is stupid. Finally, we have Caillou's promise. Caillou gets pissed as his sister tosses some sand into his lap. Caillou responds by screaming like a bitch and proceeds to get sand in her eyes. Caillou's mom then makes a promise I'll play nice with her, which in all honesty, doesn't seem entirely fair given that he doesn't have much of a choice. After she leaves for work, their cat Gilbert jumps onto the kitchen table to help himself to some soup. You know, typical cat behavior. Caillou opens the door to let Gilbert out. Gilbert, however, being a cat, gives zero fucks, forcing Caillou to carry him outside. Unfortunately, Gilbert chooses not to use Caillou's sandbox as a litter box. Caillou's dad reminds Caillou of the promise he made to his mom, and he accidentally lets Rosie play in the sandbox. Later, his twin friends mention that they're going to the circus. Oh no, not this again. He asks his dad if they could go to the circus, to which he says he promises he'll talk to Caillou's mom about it as soon as he gets home.
My daddy promised to take me tomorrow.
You dumb asshole! They then say they'll ask their mom if Caillou could come with them to the circus today. When Caillou asks, "Promise?" they don't really answer.
Promise? Bye, Caillou.
At lunchtime, when Caillou tells his dad all of this, Rosie says she wants to go too. Caillou responds in his usual asshole manner.
No, Rosie. They're my friends and you're not coming.
When his dad says the circus is probably a no-go, Caillou runs off screeching like a little bitch once again.
But they promised.
No, they really didn't. Caillou's dad follows him into his bedroom, and Caillou again whines that the twins promised. His dad says that they might have made a promise too quickly. Again, no they didn't. They never said yes, no, or even maybe. His dad then rewards his son incessant whining with a promise to the circus. Not only that, but he gets to go to the circus today after all. Which just goes to show you that being a whiny bitch pays off. This episode got banned because of Caillou's treatment of his sister. Specifically, for getting sand in her eyes and for being a massive douchebag when she wanted to go to the circus too. For the first one though, that was pretty clearly accidental, not purposeful as some would suggest. It's not like he grabbed a fistful of sand and tossed it in her face. Granted though, while his mom does tell him to play nice, she probably also should have told him to be more careful in the sand too. As for Caillou yelling at Rosie, again, that's just your typical Caillou behavior, so it's weird that this specific instance got flack, but not the many other times he did the same thing. What really bugs me about this episode, though, is how its Aesop is handled. The lesson here is that you should be careful about making promises that you can't keep. Except once again, the twins never promised Caillou anything. He just assumed that they would bring him, even though they never gave him an answer one way or another. And just a moment earlier, he just assumed that his dad would take him to the circus. If anything, this episode should have been a lesson against making assumptions when you're not given a solid answer, because you'll just end up making an asshole out of you and me. That's just about all the Caillou episodes that have been banned from the air, at least all the ones I'm aware of. I was actually surprised to see just how many of these episode bannings I did agree with. What's more, I even found myself sympathizing with Caillou in a few of these instances. Now that's a frightening thing to say. Nonetheless, while I'm more than willing to give credit where credit is due, as a whole, there's a good reason why Caillou is hated to this very day. His abhorrent behavior occurs and goes unpunished way too often, which is something that most people would rather not have their extremely impressible toddlers picking up on. I know it's ultimately the parents' responsibility to make sure what their kids are watching is appropriate, but I also don't think it's wrong for them to expect media that's made for a specific age group to not show bad behavior going unpunished. Even if you want to argue that the hate he gets might be slightly overblown, I can still understand the reasoning behind it. And now, I've officially jumped on the Caillou hate train too. I don't know what that says about me as a person on YouTube, but hopefully you enjoy my bitching about a fictional 4-year-old.